That's my cue. And it's very, very, I don't know what the word should say. To welcome, really a welcome from all of us to Alex this morning. She's stepping in the very last moment to take the place of Paul, who is also here. Paul has lost his voice. He cannot talk. He is sick. So he's here to listen to how she develops her presentation of something that they're very proud of. They're part of a fraud awareness team that was developed by the Rotary Club in Kingston. And it's been so successful that they are presenting it around the province. And here they are. Paul was going to do it in person to a Rotary Club this morning, but he's not here. He's at home and he's joined the virtual workshop. And Alex, like the rest of us, she's retired, but she has spent her time in the workforce. She actually retired after starting off as a lawyer and ending up in the business world with several major corporations in business or management positions, and actually retired as a general manager of the Cooper Vision Canada, and decided she wanted to retire in Kingston. She loved Kingston, and there she is. So here we are with two people from Kingston, and Paul is originally from Brantford. He was one of my classmates in BCI. Back then, there was only BCI, but he moved on to PJ when it opened up for any of you that are history buffs. So, having said that, welcome, Alex. And this is something that they have been sharing with all kinds of people, older adults, to create awareness and prevent scams. And so it's over to her.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. Um, I actually just learned something about Paul. I had no idea that, Paul, that you came from Brantford. Who knew? Anyway, we'll get right on. So we're just going to cover I mean, there are so many scams. You read about them constantly. But the ones that we're going to focus on today are telephone scams, common cybersecurity threats, cybersecurity being things on your computer, just general ways to protect your money, and preventing identity theft. I've got on here conclusion and resources. I understand from Paul that you have already received the pamphlet that we distribute, and that gives you reference guides to the different resources. If in fact you find yourself a victim of scam. So here's a staggering statistic. We're looking at 2024. And there's a group called the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. And based on their statistics, in 2024, 51,676 fraud reports were processed, representing $638 million of reported losses. Now, remember, this is Canada. The problem with that is that we believe that only 5 to 10% of fraud cases are actually reported. So if you extrapolate that to the reality of the situation, in fact, what we're looking at is more than 500,000 people losing over $6 billion in Canada in 2024 alone. And I just want to touch on the fact that so few people report. I think a lot of it, some of it, if it's not a lot of money, or maybe they didn't actually fall for it, even though they were approached, they don't bother reporting. And I think that a lot of it is because people are embarrassed. They feel like, oh, how could I have fallen for that? How could I be so stupid? But the people who are behind these tactics are remarkably sophisticated. And in fact, there are literally cities particularly in Southeast Asia. They just closed one in Cambodia. And the sad thing is some of the people who actually do this are trafficked themselves. It's a very sad situation, but it is very, very sophisticated. So if you find yourself a victim, do not feel ashamed about it. And the thing to do is report it ASAP. So let's start with telephone scams. You know, when I present this in front of a group of people, I always ask the question, how many people here have received the telephone call from the CRA or Amazon or Purelate or whoever? And pretty much everybody in the room has had a phone call like that. The thing is, when you hear that, a lot of times they will throw out words like, this is a criminal activity. We're going to calling the police. This is fraud. And what they're trying to do is create that sense of urgency. They're trying to scare you. A lot of times with these kinds of scams, there's an attempt to instill fear. And the reason is quite simple. If you get in a panic about something, you tend not to think rationally. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to be in a panic because ultimately what they're trying to do is get you to give them your personal information, your banking information, your credit card information. And the more they can wind you up, the greater the chance that they can access that. So I've just put in some examples here. A good one is that they owe you money, because who doesn't want to get a phone call saying, hey, we owe you $680. And so the instinct, of course, is, oh, that's nice. And then you want to give them your bank information so that they can make a direct deposit. Of course, they're not trying to instill fear. On that case, they're trying to instill trust. They may say to you, if they're pretending to be a credit card company, that there was a questionable charge against your bank or your credit card. And the thing is, credit card companies will actually contact you, but if they think that there's something, because they monitor what you're purchasing, and if all of a sudden one day they're getting something from Brazil, they may actually reach out and say something doesn't seem right. If it's legitimate, if you ask them, okay, this seems like a transaction that's not legitimate, what was the preceding transaction? Because if it's legitimate, they will be able to tell you everything that you've purchased on that credit card or bank card before the so-called dubious transaction. And so that's just a really clever way to just make sure if in fact it is legitimate. You may have somebody calling you saying, I see your computer is not working. I actually had this. And I, at the time, was working with my organization. First of all, nobody out there can see whether your computer is working or not. So if somebody says that to you, that is 100% scam. In my case, to be honest with you, I was a bit like, really? But I remember saying to them, well, I have a huge IT department. So if there's any issues, I'll just get in touch with them. Um, Lastly, they may claim to be a family member, and we're going to talk specifically more about grandparent scams. But, there's a statistic, I took the slide out, but when we created this presentation, we did it in conjunction actually with the Kingston Police, the City of Police, and the police chief. We originally had the statistic in there that some of these scams, up to 1 in 7, can be perpetrated by a member of the family. And the chief of police actually said to us, it's probably more like 1 in 5, which is a dreadful statistic. And to be honest with you, really staggering, hard for me to even believe, but that is in fact what he said. So one of the most difficult things about these telephone scams is the ability, particularly with AI now, to make the call seem really legitimate. So when you pick up the phone, it will identify sometimes who's calling you. It may give you the name and it may give you the phone number. And now with AI, you only have to record somebody for about 4 or 5 seconds, and you can actually imitate their voice as well. Anyway, this actually happened to my daughter. She got a call from the London courthouse London, Ontario, saying that she had this outstanding parking fine. She was at the University of Guelph and would come home to Kingston. She never went to London. But it actually said the London courthouse. And when she Googled the phone number, it was the phone number of the London courthouse. It was just by happenstance that she said she knew it couldn't be legitimate because she never went to London. So she reported it to the Kingston police. And sure enough, they said complete scam. But it raises a good point, and that is they can make the number look legitimate. So if you're in a situation where you really aren't sure, make sure that you never rely on a number that's been provided to you. Make sure that you always, if you say, okay, you know what, I'll call you back, make sure that you are the one that looks up the correct number. Because what nowadays, it used to be, I'll believe it when I see it with my own eyes. Unfortunately, we cannot rely on that anymore. One of the pieces of advice that we give is to speak briefly, again, because remember, AI can record your voice, and avoid saying the word yes. That's probably not such an issue now, but certainly historically, you would have bank transactions where it would say, do you consent to such and such a transaction? And it wanted you, in order to go ahead with it, you would say yes. So we try to say avoid saying yes because we don't want you being recorded with that. Um, my mom used to just oh God, they're going. I'm sorry, there go my dogs. My mother would just not pick up the phone. Let the answering machine pick up the phone if you don't recognize the number. The point with this is, and it's a very simple one. And if you take anything from this presentation, this is it. First of all, banks, credit cards, companies, and the CRA do not ask for information over the phone. And the big one is never, ever provide personal banking or credit card information over the phone unless you look up the real number. So, in other words, if you get a call from your bank and they say, yes, call us back, the number is 1-800, blah, 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 ignore that. Go online or wherever you can access your information and make sure that you initiate the call with the number that you have validated as the correct one. Can everybody hear me? I'm sort of tempted to go and do something about my dogs, but nobody can answer me anyway. Oh, well, I'm just going to ignore them and hopefully it's okay. I was rather hoping my husband would look after the dogs. So let's talk about grandparent scams. This is horrifying. And again, I always ask people in the room who have, if anybody's been affected by this. And truthfully, I have yet to do one of these presentations and not have at least one or two people have at least been approached by this. And I've met a couple who've actually fallen for it. So you get somebody on the other line who is pretending to be a grandchild or a family member. And this becomes very dangerous when you have AI that can imitate that person's voice. They always create a sense of urgency, normally by mentioning a threat. Like, I've been in an accident. A lot of times they'll say, I'm not calling from my own phone because my phone's been damaged. I'm in big trouble. Or they'll have somebody else will be saying, your grandson's been arrested and they're in jail. And if you want to bail them out. And so they try to create this sense of urgency and panic to throw you off your game. A lot of times, what we suggest is, number one is, when the next time you're with your family, you need to sit down together and come up with a family password so that in that situation, you don't have to think of, oh, what would be something that my grandchild would know that nobody else would know? Because you can do that too. What was the name of your first dog? But if you all agree on a family password, all you have to say is, what is the family password? And if they don't know it, hang up the phone. At the end of the day, no matter what, before you ever do anything, call the parents, just call and validate, get that confirmation, and never ever send money without it. The banks are very good at stopping huge withdrawals for this kind of thing. So let's talk about common cybersecurity threats. So this is a bit of an older statistic. I was trying to get an updated one. $58 million lost in 2022 through phishing. So phishing are fake emails or messages that are sent to steal information. And we're just going to go over that in more detail. So this is a genuine fake email that Paul actually received. And they're designed to trick you into divulging personal or confidential information. Again, they're looking for bank account numbers, credit cards, or passwords. And I'm just going to, I blew this up a little bit here. So first of all, look at this part right here. This is the sense of urgency. Failure to do this will immediately render your web email address deactivated from our database. So the first thing is creating that urgency. But you can be careful when you see something like this. When you look at the URL, which is this thing right here, the address where this is taking you, um, if you see lots of weird numbers and weird letters, and then this one is particularly desperate, quite frankly, Queen's U with the YOU, or if you look at who it's from, Queen's U University, it's pretty clear that this is a desperate fake attempt. But here's the thing, this is from 2018. 8 years later, and with the advent of AI, these things have become a lot more sophisticated. So you have to really be careful. One of the things that we suggest, and this is something that happened to me, I was trying to sell a Fitbit on Facebook Marketplace. You have to be really careful with some of these buying platforms. The platforms themselves are legitimate. It's the people out there who try to scam you. Um, this person said, "Oh, I sent you an e-transfer. I'm not sure. Can you check your emails? Don't know why it doesn't seem to be going through. It's pending." And so, sure enough, I get this email, and I'm dubious because mine is automatic deposit, but it's saying your transfer awaits and select a financial institution. If you hover on this link, this is actually what comes up. Lots of weird letters and XYZ slash, all sorts of weird things. In actuality, I did click on this. And then it brings you up all the financial institutions. And then I clicked on BMO because it looks so legitimate. And I clicked on my bank and I almost went to put it in. And then I thought, you're on the fraud committee. I stopped myself. But the thing is, like I say, it looks so legitimate. I got a fine. This is fake notifications from Service Ontario. I got a ticket with the photo radar people a few months ago. And shortly after that, I paid it. I knew I paid it. I got a note saying, our system shows your radar ticket still hasn't been paid. What concerns me with this is how did they know? But if you look at this again, the sense of urgency will suspend your license for 30 days. Then it gets a bit weird. Referral to a toll booth with a 35% service fee. You may be prosecuted and your credit score may be affected. But again, look at the weird URL, ontario.po safedriving.cc. I mean, I got one literally a couple of days ago. And then look at the URL with this, same thing, Service Ontario. This is apparently for parking fines. But again, look at the URL, ontario.584.xin. Like, that's so fake. This is an email that I got from Amazon. And I had placed an order. Again, makes you wonder how they know about these things, but I placed an order, said your order had been confirmed. And then a few minutes later, I got an email saying that the order had been rejected. So I was very dubious. But what they want you to do is click this and then give them your credit card information. Update your payment method. Let me get that credit card information from you. So again, hover on that link and you know what, don't go there, just don't do it. Never ever provide your bank, credit card, or any other kind of personal information on any link unless you've initiated. Just don't go there. This one was one that Paul got and it looks so legitimate, right? Canada Environmental Rebate, and they want you to click on that financial institution because your funds await. So the other thing with software and the idea of clicking links and so on is that you can end up getting a virus on your device, which can harm your device, but it can also access personal data. So, if any of you use computers regularly, we recommend strongly making sure that you have antivirus software on your computer and making sure that it gets updated very regularly. And if you're not sure how to do that, a visit to Best Buy, to one of the Geek Squad people, can help you with that kind of thing. Again, avoid clicking any unknown links. If your computer gets hacked, of course, what they want you to do is panic because they want to throw you off your game and then you're not thinking straight. So, it's going to create chaos. Your screen may start flashing, voice saying, don't turn off your computer, call this number. And then you may find that if you're trying to deal with your computer, that the curse has been disabled and you can't turn it off. You can always turn off your computer. Remember, if it's a laptop, pulling out the plug will not turn it off because it runs on a battery. But if you do have that happen, just hit the power button and just hold it. Just hold it and it will shut down your computer. And then my advice is take it immediately to an expert and let them have a good look at it, get rid of any virus and make sure that nothing's been stolen. So this is all about protecting your money. You know, it's when you do this, you kind of almost get sad about the state of humanity. Like we really lose a bit of faith in humanity with some of these things. So these are scammers who build fake relationships online to gain trust. And eventually they're going to start asking for money or gifts. And I listened to a podcast. It was done between the BBC and the CBC. They'd actually stolen, these people had stolen a woman's identity and created this fake person. And then this fake person was meeting all these people online. And I don't know if you've ever had this. I'll get a text all of a sudden that says, "Hi, how are you?" And they're really hoping that you'll start engaging in a conversation. They may do it on social media platforms if your settings aren't private. Um, the thing is that what they're looking for are people who are potentially lonely, vulnerable, and widows are especially vulnerable. And you have to be really careful. We put out obituaries saying that somebody's died, but these people will actually search through that information because they know that that person's in a vulnerable position. I had it happen to a friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, I met this guy online, and she was going on. He's from the UK, and he wants to come to Canada, and he's a dental surgeon with the." So it bothered me so much. I went home and I looked up the Royal College of Dental Surgeons because she had his name, and I don't know her that well, but I said to her, he's not listed. If it were legitimate, I think he'd be listed. And sure enough, she said to me a couple of weeks later, 100% right. He started asking for money. So one of the things and the other thing with this is only you can help. This is the bizarre thing that they have no other family. They don't have a bank. They don't have anywhere else they can get money. It's always only you that can help them. If you've never met the person in person, remember, no meeting, no money. So I've just sort of summarized some of the other common scams to avoid. Door to door. Sometimes you get these people who come to the door and they may use high pressure tactics. They need to see your what do you call it, the water heater in the basement. There's all these contracts and stuff. Even if you feel there are high pressure tactics, do not succumb to them and just don't let any unexpected strangers into your house. I think part of the reason that seniors are targeted is because they tend to be more polite. But you know what? It's perfectly acceptable to be very firm, if not rude, and say, "No, you absolutely cannot come in my house." Distraction-based theft. We had a case a little while ago in Kingston where you had a woman who was it's happened a couple of times. Woman would go to the grocery store, throw her purse in the passenger seat. Somebody would come up and say, "You got a flat tire." She goes around and is looking at the flat tire. Somebody else comes in, very quietly lifts the credit card out of the purse. She doesn't even know it's missing because the purse is still there, but the credit card is gone. You have to just make sure you keep your purse or your wallet with you and within your line of sight all the time. And that seems kind of crazy if somebody says you've got a flat tire. You know what? Take your purse with you when you have a look. Shoulder surfing, and with this, I'm thinking of ATMs, stores, and so on. So you need to just be mindful of your surroundings. And there have been incidents that where people have actually had they found the camera on the ATM and so on. So when you're putting in your PIN number, make sure you hide it. And if you can, kind of memorize how you do it so that you hide it and you don't have to even look. Just be very mindful of your surroundings in that situation. Advance fee fraud is where you get contractors who demand to have the full amount upfront. That is completely unenforceable. There's no way you have to pay the full amount upfront. There was a thing a while ago where these people were doing driveways in Kingston, and they were taking money and then either absconding or just doing a terrible job. So if you are getting a contractor to do any kind of work at all, we recommend word of mouth. If somebody else has used them and they have, great reference, fabulous. Otherwise, at least make sure you're checking the references online. Online offers. So this actually happened to Paul. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Paul. But you get these, and this was actually on a Costco page, but there were little adverts on the side. And it's sort of set up so that you think it's Costco, which is an incredibly trusted brand. But in actuality, they're independent adverts, and it was like 90% off. And so you sign up for this thing, and it turned out in this case that it was for a moisturizer for his wife. Turned out it was a subscription, and so yes, you think you're getting 90% off, but without realizing it, you've just signed up for something that's going to cost you $200 a month. So what we say is read the small print. If it seems too good to be true, yeah, it probably is. It's probably fake. Lastly, QR codes. They're ubiquitous nowadays. Everywhere you go, there's a QR code, and they work. They're very efficient, but fraudsters have figured out, like on a poster, they can do an over label, and if you when you're scanning that QR code, you don't actually know where it's taking you. So just make sure if you are using one, it's legitimate. There's not an over label, it's the original. And if there's an online, if you see a QR code online, be very diligent. Just be very, very diligent with that, and don't go there unless you're really, really confident of the source. One of the things to know about, again, I asked this question, how many people have a credit card that taps? Again, we all do. The thing is, those credit cards are always broadcasting, and scammers can use portable readers to take that data and use it for themselves. So you can actually get these devices, which essentially it's like a metal case, and that metal case blocks the signal. If they're very cheap to buy. I've seen them at different places. CAA sells them for sure. And if you don't want to be bothered to do that, just wrap your cards in foil, because that does the same thing. This is a really unbelievable example of an overpayment scam. In this particular case, the individual was selling 4 wheels on the internet for $1,000. And this is what I mean with being careful with buying platforms. So they received a hard copy check, which was sent by courier for $2,500. So in this case, the person who was selling was an honest soul, contacted the buyer and said, you gave me too much. And it was, I got mixed up. Just e-transfer me the difference. And a lot of times these things will happen on a Friday afternoon when the banks aren't open. But on Monday, went into the bank, and that check, even the bank said, looked so real, but it was a fake. If he had fallen for it, he would have e-transferred $1,500 and would have been out that money. Last but not least, we're on the subject of identity theft. So, identity theft basically is where your personal information gets stolen, and it can be through one of these phishing online traps, or actually through paper documents that get stolen. You know, from your home. There are people who will go through garbage dumpsters and so on and so forth. There are definitely things that you can do to help prevent these things. Of course, remember, not clicking on any unknown links. That's the big one for the online ones. Use credit monitoring services. If you suspect any kind of suspicious activity on your credit card, call immediately and freeze it or cancel it. And for the dumpster divers, make sure that you are shredding those personal documents or burning them, never just tearing them up. It's too easy to put them back together. Store your sensitive documents very securely, bank deposit box, or at least some kind of safe. Do not carry your SIN card or your birth certificate with you. If you lose those, they are really like a key to open up all sorts of information for the undesirables who are out there to get you. One of the things that we personally take advantage of two-factor authentication on accounts. So even something like Uber, if you order an Uber, you can actually set it up so that when you order the Uber, you get a message saying, "Is this you actually ordering it?" They'll send a text to your phone or to your email or whatever. And it just is a really good way to make sure that you're not getting duped. We do also have it on our credit cards. So we get a message saying, such and such was just put on your credit card, which is great until you're trying to organize your husband's surprise retirement party. And he can see absolutely everything that you're trying to buy. Then you have to borrow credit cards from people to make up for that. The other thing is maintain lists, because you're keeping these things in a safe place. If anything does get stolen, like your SIN number, if you've carried it with you, you need to make sure that you have your own, just keep everything a record of it, your SIN number, your driver's license, your bank. That way, if anything does happen, you've got that information available to you. The other thing that's absolutely important is to create strong passwords. And I know it's so difficult because you're trying to remember them, and don't use names, don't use birthdays. Remember, if they see what's going on, like if they go on Facebook, for example, and they see your birthday, it's very easy to put together your name and your birthday, and boom, your password's been given away. So we suggest trying to if there's something that means something to you, but mix it together. So Jack 1 2 3 4 it becomes J1 A2 C3, etc. You can also use password managers as a secure vault. I have that on my phone. The only way I can get into it is by the facial recognition. You can also use it using a password. It's very, very secure. And then you only have to remember the two passwords, because you have an extra secure password to access the device, and then another complex password to access the password manager, and all your passwords are there. So highly recommended. If you own your own home, particularly if it's mortgage free, it's very recommended that you get title insurance. I had never heard of title insurance until we bought this house, and our lawyer said to us, you should get it. Because basically, if somebody does steal your identity, they can put a big mortgage on the house, they can actually sell it out from under you, and the title insurance will basically ensure that your title to that property is protected. Likewise, identity restoration coverage is, if you get, you can actually get that on your insurance policy. And what that means is that if somebody does steal your identity, it's a bit of a nightmare going through it all, but the coverage gives you basically compensation to put you back in the position that you would have been before the identity theft if you've lost money. Because Because with these identity thefts, again, they can set up a line of credit or put a mortgage on your house and so on. So there are insurance policies that you can take out to protect yourself in respect of those. So that's basically it. I always say we say we're not about scaring you, but we do want to make you aware and maybe a little bit paranoid, because better safe than sorry, I always say. So I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody